This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for October 11th, 6 p.m. What a difference 24 hours makes. Yesterday we were tracking Invest 98L down southeast of the Nicaragua-Honduras border, and today we now have a tropical storm pretty close to hurricane strength according to the hurricane hunters. They've been flying around out there today. I'll show you the Recon fixes in a minute. But we have a tropical storm near the Nicaraguan-Honduran border. The official forecast has this coming very near Cozumel, Mexico, and then hanging a U-turn here in the northwest Caribbean Sea. The official forecast keeps this as a Category 1 hurricane and traps it in the northwest Caribbean Sea because we're going to have a cold front come off the east coast of the United States, but it's not going to be enough to pull it on out, and it's going to get trapped down here in the Caribbean. So we could be watching this system well into next week, which could set the stage for a potential down the road impact to the state of Florida. You never know, this thing could get pulled north, or it could just linger down here in the northwest Caribbean Sea for 10 days or so before it starts moving off to the east. It's a little too early to tell what exactly is going to happen down the road with this system. Now here's the current position of our system. Tropical Storm Paula is just northwest of our current feature, which is Cabo Gracias de Dios, Nicaragua. It's about 74 nautical miles to the northwest of the city, so it will not be considered as a tropical storm hit in the Hurricane City database. In fact, the entire country of Honduras, all along here, even the border towns are not really showing much in the form of winds, light and variable winds, west-southwest and west-northwest winds on the coast as this pulls away. So in the end, it'll probably maybe be considered a brush for Honduras as it moves generally off to the northwest away from Honduras. Now here is the map of the only two systems that ever developed in the same exact location as Tropical Storm Paula, the same exact time of the year, meaning between October 10th and October 12th, because today is the 11th. So a 3-day period, we have a 1922 system that became a tropical storm and moved north like this, and moved into the Gulf of Mexico, where it weakened and headed up near the Florida Panhandle, near Alabama, Florida Panhandle, and weakened to a tropical depression. And then we have Hurricane Irene back in 1999 developed in the same exact location, the same exact time of the year, and moved over the Isle of Youth, Cuba, through the Florida Keys and right across the state of Florida as a Category 1 hurricane. And that caught a lot of people by surprise back in 1999. There was quite a few fatalities down here due to people walking around in hurricane conditions. So those are the two tracks in history. I'll show you some other images in just a minute. But while I have this map up, I want to mention that in the Hurricane City, my city picks, which I do on June 1st for the hurricane season kickoff show every year, I pick about 20 areas that I think could be affected by a named storm during the upcoming hurricane season. And any potential future city out in front of Paula would be Punta Allen, Mexico, which is right in here. That's one of my cities in southern Yucatan that I think has a chance of being affected this year. I believe we have several of the Bahama Islands out in here that could also be affected that are in my top 20, and including Grand Bahama Island up here. And of course, Fort Lauderdale, Florida is the #1 area that I think could be affected. In fact, I'm going to wear the chicken suit at the end of the hurricane season on November 30th for the end of season broadcast. If Fort Lauderdale, Florida does not get impacted by a hurricane, it has already had a tropical storm pass through, but that was Tropical Storm Bonnie, and that doesn't count. So we'll see if Fort Lauderdale can get affected. Also, Miami is number 15 on my list, a little bit further south here. So, and also San Salvador, Bahama Islands. I think the Central Bahamas have a pretty decent chance of being affected by this. Whether it's a hurricane or not is another story, but that would be later next week. So we'll watch this and see if any of my cities do end up getting affected by this system. All right, here are all the systems that developed in this location in October, not just to zero it down on those 3 days. We have October 14th, a hurricane came up like this and cut across South Florida. Next we have another hurricane that developed in 1944, and this one developed in the same exact location, moved north over the Isle of Youth and came up near Sarasota, Florida through Tampa and did quite a bit of damage. In 1947, another system developed down here, west tip of Cuba, cut across Florida, and then came back toward the southeastern United States back in mid-October 1947. And then we had Hurricane King, 1950, developed in the same exact location, ended up hitting South Florida from the southeast. That became a major hurricane. Not expecting that kind of track with this. And October 12th, as I mentioned earlier, Hurricane Irene back in 1999. All right, here are the models on Paula so far. The early model runs. GFDL has this as a strong Category 2, almost Category 3 strength up here going through the Florida Straits. The LBAR over South Florida. The other models keep it lingering down here. The UK Met, the official forecast, the BAM models, the NOGAPs, all keep it lingering down here in the Northwest Caribbean Sea, and that's why the official forecast reflects that. But none of the models are really showing this getting very intense. They're keeping it right around Category 1 because we're going to have some southwesterly wind shear and dry air in this location over the next, toward the end of the week. There's going to be a little southwest wind shear here, so we're not expecting a real intense system. But water temperatures are very warm down there. In fact, let me show you. This is the heat content from the Hurricane Research Division. And all these temperatures, these oranges and yellows and brighter colors in here indicate very warm temperatures of 78 degrees or higher below the surface of the ocean. And that's fuel for systems that stall out. And that's important in the case of Paula because the potential forecast for late in the week indicates this is going to stall out in the Northwest Caribbean Sea, and what happens is when you have a hurricane stall, the cooler waters from underneath come to the surface and weaken the system. But we have very warm sea surface temperatures well below the surface, so this will prevent a lot of deterioration of Paula due to the fact that there's a lot of warm waters that'll keep getting pumped to the surface, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. All right, here's the Recon fixes. The Recon's been out there all day long flying around this afternoon. Well, not all day, but since around 2 o'clock. And they started out finding around 46 knots, 40 knots at the surface. Then the next fix, they found, this was a few hours ago, they found winds of 69 knots near the surface. So that's hurricane force winds. The last fix here is from around 4 o'clock a couple hours ago, and that's showing the winds at 33 knots at the surface. So we definitely have a tropical storm, and the official forecast again has this becoming a hurricane as it cruises off to the northwest. Here is the visible loop of our system, very well organized right along the north coast of Honduras. Yesterday's update I mentioned the banding features on this system. Well, look at them now. Look at all the banding going on here. You got a lot of inflow coming into this and outflow here. This is a very well developed system. So once it gets into these warm waters up in here, this thing should go ahead and, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if this got up to Category 2 strength. I know the official forecast is Cat 1. Category 2 or even major hurricane wouldn't surprise me as it gets up in this area here, but it's very warm and the system will be lingering up in here. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. Long time to watch this if you're in Florida, the northwest and northeastern Yucatan Peninsula, western Cuba. Pay close attention to this. We'll see what happens late week, and we may have a very formidable system to deal with. All right, that's it for now. Tomorrow I'll be back with another update in the afternoon, and we'll get on to all the models. We'll run all the models, tell you what the percentages are, what the best performing models are, intensity, the whole 9 yards. That'll be tomorrow afternoon. In the meantime, visit hurricanecity.com for the latest models and information on Tropical Storm Paula. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.